Chapter 20. Freed from prison, Pinocchio sets out to return to the fairy. But on the way, he meets a serpent, and later is caught in a trap. Fancy the happiness of Pinocchio on finding himself free. Without saying yes or no, he fled from the city and set out on the road that was to take him back to the house of the lovely fairy. It had rained for many days, and the road was so muddy that at times Pinocchio sank down almost to his knees. But he kept on bravely. Tormented by the wish to see his father and his fairy sister with azure hair, he raced like a greyhound. As he ran, he was splashed with mud even up to his cap. "How unhappy I have been," he said to himself. "And yet I deserve everything, for I am certainly very stubborn and stupid. I will always have my own way. I won't listen to those who love me and who have more brains than I. But from now on, I'll be different, and I'll try to become a most obedient boy. I have found out beyond any doubt whatever that disobedient boys are certainly far from happy, and that in the long run, they always lose out. I wonder if Father is waiting for me. Will I find him at the fairy's house? It is so long, poor man, since I have seen him, and I do so want his love and his kisses. And will the fairy ever forgive me for all I have done? She who has been so good to me and to whom I owe my life? Can there be a worse or more heartless boy than I am anywhere?" As he spoke, he stopped suddenly, frozen with terror. What was the matter? An immense serpent lay stretched across the road. A serpent with a bright green skin, fiery eyes which glowed and burned, and a pointed tail that smoked like a chimney. How frightened was poor Pinocchio! He ran back wildly for half a mile, and at last settled himself atop a heap of stones to wait for the serpent to go on his way and leave the road clear for him. He waited an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, but the serpent was always there, and even from afar one could see the flash of his red eyes and the column of smoke which rose from his long, pointed tail. Pinocchio, trying to feel very brave, walked straight up to him and said in a sweet, soothing voice, "I beg your pardon, Mr. Serpent. Would you be so kind as to step aside to let me pass?" He might as well have talked to a wall. The serpent never moved. Once more, in the same sweet voice, he spoke, "You must know, Mr. Serpent, that I am going home, where my father is waiting for me. It is so long since I have seen him. Would you mind very much if I passed?" He waited for some sign of an answer to his questions, but the answer did not come. On the contrary, the green serpent, who had seemed until then wide awake and full of life, became suddenly very quiet and still. His eyes closed, and his tail stopped smoking. "Is he dead, I wonder?" said Pinocchio, rubbing his hands together happily. Without a moment's hesitation, he started to step over him. But he had just raised one leg when the serpent shot up like a spring, and the marionette fell head over heels backward. He fell so awkwardly that his head stuck in the mud, and there he stood with his legs straight up in the air. At the sight of the marionette kicking and squirming like a young whirlwind, the serpent laughed so heartily and so long that at last he burst an artery and died on the spot. Pinocchio freed himself from his awkward position and once more began to run in order to reach the fairy's house before dark. As he went, the pangs of hunger grew so strong that, unable to withstand them, he jumped into a field to pick a few grapes that tempted him. Woe to him! No sooner had he reached the grapevine than crack went his legs. The poor marionette was caught in a trap set there by a farmer for some weasels, which came every night to steal his chickens. Chapter 21. Pinocchio is caught by a farmer who uses him as a watchdog for his chicken coop.
Pinocchio, as you may well imagine, began to scream and weep and beg. But all was of no use, for no houses were to be seen, and not a soul passed by on the road. Night came on. A little because of the sharp pain in his legs, a little because of fright at finding himself alone in the darkness of the field, the marionette was about to faint, when he saw a tiny glowworm flickering by. He called to her and said, "Dear little glowworm, will you set me free?" "Poor little fellow," replied the glowworm, stopping to look at him with pity. "How came you to be caught in this trap?" "I stepped into this lonely field to take a few grapes, and—"
"Are the grapes yours?" "No. Who has taught you to take things that do not belong to you?" "I was hungry." "Hunger, my boy, is no reason for taking something which belongs to another." It's true, cried Pinocchio in tears. "I won't do it again." Just then the conversation was interrupted by approaching footsteps. It was the owner of the field, who was coming on tiptoes to see if, by chance, he had caught the weasels which had been eating his chickens. Great was his surprise when, on holding up his lantern, he saw that, instead of a weasel, he had caught a boy. "Ah, you little thief," said the farmer in an angry voice. "So you are the one who steals my chickens." "Not I. No, cried Pinocchio, sobbing bitterly. "I came here only to take a very few grapes." "He who steals grapes may very easily steal chickens also. Take my word for it. I'll give you a lesson that you'll remember for a long while." He opened the trap, grabbed the marionette by the collar, and carried him to the house as if he were a puppy. When he reached the yard in front of the house, he flung him to the ground, put a foot on his neck, and said to him roughly, "It is late now, and it's time for bed. Tomorrow we'll settle matters. In the meantime, since my dog watch died today, you may take his place and guard my hen house." No sooner said than done. He slipped a dog collar around Pinocchio's neck and tightened it so that it would not come off. A long iron chain was tied to the collar. The other end of the chain was nailed to the wall.
"If tonight it should happen to rain," said the farmer, "you can sleep in that little doghouse nearby, where you will find plenty of straw for a soft bed. It has been Melampo's bed for 3 years, and it will be good enough for you. And if, by any chance, any thieves should come, be sure to bark." After this last warning, the farmer went into the house and closed the door and barred it. Poor Pinocchio huddled close to the doghouse, more dead than alive from cold, hunger, and fright. Now and again he pulled and tugged at the collar which nearly choked him, and cried out in a weak voice, "I deserve it. Yes, I deserve it. I have been nothing but a truant and a vagabond. I have never obeyed anyone, and I have always done as I pleased. If I were only like so many others, and had studied and worked and stayed with my poor old father, I should not find myself here, now, in this field, and in the darkness, taking the place of a farmer's dog watch. Oh, if I could start all over again! But what is done can't be undone, and I must be patient." After this little sermon to himself, which came from the very depths of his heart, Pinocchio went into the doghouse and fell asleep.
Chapter 22. Pinocchio discovers the thieves, and as a reward for faithfulness, he regains his liberty. Even though a boy may be very unhappy, he very seldom loses sleep over his worries. The marionette, being no exception to this rule, slept on peacefully for a few hours till well along toward midnight.
when he was awakened by strange whisperings and stealthy sounds coming from the yard. He stuck his nose out of the doghouse and saw 4 slender, hairy animals. They were weasels, small animals very fond of both eggs and chickens. One of them left her companions and, going to the door of the doghouse, said in a sweet voice, "Good evening, Melampo." "My name is not Melampo," answered Pinocchio. "Who are you then?" "I am Pinocchio." "What are you doing here?" "I'm the watchdog." "But where is Melampo? Where's the old dog who used to live in this house?" "He died this morning." "Died? Oh, poor beast, he was so good. Still, judging by your face, I think you too are a good-natured dog." "I beg your pardon, I am not a dog." "What are you then?" "I am a marionette." "Are you taking the place of the watchdog?" "I'm sorry to say that I am. I'm being punished." "Well, I shall make the same terms with you that we had with the dead Melampo. I am sure you will be glad to hear them." "And what are the terms?" "This is our plan. We'll come once in a while, as in the past, to pay a visit to this hen house, and we'll take away 8 chickens. Of these, 7 are for us and 1 for you, provided, of course, that you will make believe you are sleeping and will not bark for the farmer." "Did Melampo really do that?" asked Pinocchio.
Indeed he did, and because of that, we were the best of friends. Sleep away peacefully, and remember that before we go, we shall leave you a nice fat chicken all ready for your breakfast in the morning. Is that understood?" "Even too well," answered Pinocchio, and shaking his head in a threatening manner, he seemed to say, "We'll talk this over in a few minutes, my friends." As soon as the 4 weasels had talked things over, they went straight to the chicken coop, which stood close to the doghouse. Digging busily with teeth and claws, they opened the little door and slipped in. But they were no sooner in than they heard the door close with a sharp bang. The one who had done the trick was Pinocchio, who, not satisfied with that, dragged a heavy stone in front of it. That done, he started to bark, and he barked as if he were a real watchdog. "Bow wow wow wow! Bow wow!" The farmer heard the loud barks and jumped out of bed. Taking his gun, he leaped to the window and shouted, "What's the matter?" "The thieves are here," answered Pinocchio. "Where are they?" "In the chicken coop." "I'll come down in a second." And in fact, he was down in the yard in a twinkling and running toward the chicken coop. He opened the door, pulled out the weasels one by one, and, after tying them in a bag, said to them in a happy voice, "You're in my hands at last. I could punish you now, but I'll wait. In the morning, you may come with me to the inn, and there you'll make a fine dinner for some hungry mortal. It is really too great an honor for you, one you do not deserve, but as you see, I am really a very kind and generous man, and I am going to do this for you." Then he went up to Pinocchio and began to pet and caress him. "How did you ever find them out so quickly? And to think that Melampo, my faithful Melampo, never saw them in all these years." The marionette could have told, then and there, all he knew about the shameful contract between the dog and the weasels, but thinking of the dead dog, he said to himself, "Melampo was dead. What is the use of accusing him? The dead are gone, and they cannot defend themselves. The best thing to do is to leave them in peace." "Were you awake or asleep when they came?" continued the farmer. "I was asleep," answered Pinocchio, "but they awakened me with their whisperings. One of them even came to the door of the doghouse and said to me, 'If you promise not to bark, we will make you a present of one of the chickens for your breakfast.' Did you hear that? They had the audacity to make such a proposition as that to me. For you must know that though I am a very wicked marionette full of faults, still I never have been nor ever shall be bribed. Fine boy, cried the farmer, slapping him on the shoulder in a friendly way. You ought to be proud of yourself. And to show you what I think of you, you are free from this instant. And he slipped the dog collar from his neck.
Chapter 23. Pinocchio weeps upon learning that the lovely maiden with azure hair is dead. He meets a pigeon, who carries him to the seashore. He throws himself into the sea to go to the aid of his father. As soon as Pinocchio no longer felt the shameful weight of the dog collar around his neck, he started to run across the fields and meadows and never stopped till he came to the main road that was to take him to the fairy's house. When he reached it, he looked into the valley far below him, and there he saw the wood where, unluckily, he had met the fox and the cat, and the tall oak tree where he had been hanged. But though he searched far and near, he could not see the house where the fairy with the azure hair lived. He became terribly frightened, and running as fast as he could, he finally came to the spot where it had once stood. The little house was no longer there. In its place lay a small marble slab which bore this sad inscription: "Here lies the lovely fairy with azure hair, who died of grief when abandoned by her little brother Pinocchio." The poor marionette was heartbroken at reading these words. He fell to the ground and, covering the cold marble with kisses, burst into bitter tears. He cried all night, and dawn found him still there, though his tears had dried, and only hard, dry sobs shook his wooden frame. But these were so loud that they could be heard by the faraway hills. As he sobbed, he said to himself, "Oh, my fairy, my dear, dear fairy, why did you die? Why did I not die, who am so bad, instead of you, who are so good? And my father, where can he be? Please, dear fairy, tell me where he is, and I shall never, never leave him again. You are not really dead, are you? If you love me, you will come back alive as before. Don't you feel sorry for me? I'm so lonely. If the two assassins come, they'll hang me again from the giant oak tree, and I will really die this time. What shall I do alone in the world? Now that you are dead and my father is lost, where shall I eat? Where shall I sleep? Who will make my new clothes? Oh, I want to die. Yes, I want to die. Oh, oh, oh!" Poor Pinocchio! He even tried to tear his hair, but as it was only painted on his wooden head, he could not even pull it. Just then a large pigeon flew far above him. Seeing the marionette, he cried to him, "Tell me, little boy, what are you doing there?" "Can't you see? I'm crying!" cried Pinocchio, lifting his head toward the voice and rubbing his eyes with his sleeve. "Tell me," asked the pigeon, "do you by chance know of a marionette, Pinocchio by name?" "Pinocchio, did you say? Pinocchio?" replied the marionette, jumping to his feet. "Why, I am Pinocchio." At this answer, the pigeon flew swiftly down to the earth. He was much larger than a turkey. "Then you know Geppetto also?" "Do I know him? He's my father, my poor dear father. Has he perhaps spoken to you as me? Will you take me to him? Is he still alive? Answer me, please. Is he still alive?" "I left him 3 days ago on the shore of a large sea." What was he doing?
He was building a little boat with which to cross the ocean. For the last 4 months, that poor man has been wandering around Europe looking for you. Not having found you yet, he has made up his mind to look for you in the New World, far across the ocean.
How far is it from here to the shore? Asked Pinocchio anxiously.
More than 50 miles. 50 miles? Oh, dear pigeon, how I wish I had your wings.
If you want to come, I'll take you with me.
How?
Astride my back. Are you very heavy?
Heavy? Not at all. I'm only a feather.
Very well. Saying nothing more, Pinocchio jumped on the pigeon's back, and as he settled himself, he cried out gaily, Gallop on, my pretty steed. I'm in a great hurry." The pigeon flew away, and in a few minutes he had reached the clouds. The marionette looked to see what was below them. His head swam, and he was so frightened that he clutched wildly at the pigeon's neck to keep himself from falling. They flew all day. Toward the evening, the pigeon said, "I'm very thirsty." "And I'm very hungry," said Pinocchio. "Let us stop a few minutes at that pigeon coop down there. Then we can go on and be at the seashore in the morning." They went into the empty coop, and there they found nothing but a bowl of water and a small basket filled with chickpeas. The marionette had always hated chickpeas.
According to him, they had always made him sick, but that night he ate them with a relish. As he finished them, he turned to the pigeon and said, "I never should have thought that chickpeas could be so good." "You must remember, my boy," answered the pigeon, "that hunger is the best sauce." After resting a few minutes longer, they set out again. The next morning, they were at the seashore. Pinocchio jumped off the pigeon's back, and the pigeon, not wanting any thanks for a kind deed, flew away swiftly and disappeared. The shore was full of people, shrieking and tearing their hair as they looked toward the sea. "What has happened?" asked Pinocchio of a little old woman. "A poor old father lost his only son some time ago, and today he built a tiny boat for himself in order to go in search of him across the ocean. The water is very rough, and we're afraid he will be drowned." "Where is the little boat?" "There, straight down there," answered the little old woman, pointing to a tiny shadow, no bigger than a nutshell, floating on the sea. Pinocchio looked closely for a few minutes and then gave a sharp cry. "It's my father! It's my father!" Meanwhile, the little boat, tossed about by the angry waters, appeared and disappeared in the waves. And Pinocchio, standing on a high rock, tired out from searching, waved to him with hand and cap, and even with his nose. It looked as if Geppetto, though far away from the shore, recognized his son, for he took off his cap and waved also.
He seemed to be trying to make everyone understand that he would come back if he were able, but the sea was so heavy that he could do nothing with his oars. Suddenly, a huge wave came, and the boat disappeared. They waited and waited for it, but it was gone. "Poor man," said the fisher folk on the shore, whispering a prayer as they turned to go home. Just then, a desperate cry was heard. Turning around, the fisher folk saw Pinocchio dive into the sea and heard him cry out, "I'll save him! I'll save my father!" The marionette, being made of wood, floated easily along and swam like a fish in the rough water. Now and again he disappeared, only to reappear once more. In a twinkling, he was far away from land. At last he was completely lost to view. "Poor boy!" cried the fisher folk on the shore, and again they mumbled a few prayers as they returned home. Chapter 24. Pinocchio reaches the island of the busy bees.
and finds the fairy once more. Pinocchio, spurred on by the hope of finding his father and of being in time to save him, swam all night long. And what a horrible night it was! It poured rain, it hailed, it thundered, and the lightning was so bright that it turned the night into day. At dawn, he saw not far away from him a long stretch of sand. It was an island in the middle of the sea. Pinocchio tried his best to get there, but he couldn't. The waves played with him and tossed him about as if he were a twig or a bit of straw. At last, and luckily for him, a tremendous wave tossed him to the very spot where he wanted to be. The blow from the wave was so strong that, as he fell to the ground, his joints cracked and almost broke. But, nothing daunted, he jumped to his feet and cried, "Once more, I have escaped with my life." Little by little, the sky cleared. The sun came out in full splendor, and the sea became as calm as a lake. Then the marionette took off his clothes and laid them on the sand to dry. He looked over the waters to see whether he might catch sight of a boat with a little man in it. He searched and he searched, but he saw nothing except sea and sky, and far away a few sails, so small that they might have been birds. "If only I knew the name of this island," he said to himself. "If I even knew what kind of people I would find here. But whom shall I ask? There is no one here." The idea of finding himself in so lonesome a spot made him so sad that he was about to cry. But just then he saw a big fish swimming nearby, with his head far out of the water. Not knowing what to call him, the marionette said to him, "Hey there, Mr. Fish, may I have a word with you?" "Even two, if you want," answered the fish, who happened to be a very polite dolphin. "Will you please tell me if on this island there are places where one may eat without necessarily being eaten?" "Surely there are," answered the dolphin. "In fact, you'll find one not far from this spot." "And how shall I get there?" "Take that path on your left and follow your nose. You can't go wrong." "Tell me another thing. You who traveled day and night through the sea, did you not perhaps meet a little boat with my father in it?" "And who is your father?" "He is the best father in the world, even as I am the worst son that can be found." "In the storm of last night, the little boat must have been swamped."
"And my father?" "By this time, he must have been swallowed by the terrible shark, which, for the last few days, has been bringing terror to these waters." "Is this shark very big?" asked Pinocchio, who was beginning to tremble with fright. "Is he big?" replied the dolphin. "Just to give you an idea of his size, let me tell you that he is larger than a 5-story building, and that he has a mouth so big and so deep that a whole train and engine could easily get into it." "Mother me!" cried the marionette, scared to death. And dressing himself as fast as he could, he turned to the dolphin and said, "Farewell, Mr. Fish. Pardon the bother, and many thanks for your kindness." This said, he took the path at so swift a gait that he seemed to fly, and at every small sound he heard, he turned in fear to see whether the terrible shark, 5 stories high and with a train in his mouth, was following him. After walking a half-hour, he came to a small country called the Land of the Busy Bees.
The streets were filled with people running to and fro about their tasks. Everyone worked. Everyone had something to do. Even if one were to search with a lantern, not one idle man or tramp could have been found. "I understand," said Pinocchio at once wearily. "This is no place for me. I was not born for work." But in the meantime, he began to feel hungry, for it was 24 hours since he had eaten. What was to be done? There were only two means left to him in order to get a bite to eat. He had to either work or he had to beg. He was ashamed to beg because his father had always preached to him that begging should be done only by the sick or the old.
He had said that the real poor in this world, deserving of our pity and help, were only those who, either through age or sickness, had lost the means of earning their bread with their own hands. All others should work, and if they didn't and went hungry, so much the worse for them. Just then, a man passed by, worn out and wet with perspiration, pulling with difficulty 2 heavy carts filled with coal. Pinocchio looked at him and, judging him by his looks to be a kind man, said to him with eyes downcast in shame, "Will you be so good as to give me a penny, for I am faint with hunger?" "Not only 1 penny," answered the coal man. "I'll give you 4 if you will help me pull these 2 wagons." "I am surprised," answered the marionette, very much offended. "I wish you to know that I never have been a donkey, nor have I ever pulled a wagon." "So much the better for you," answered the coal man. "Then, my boy, if you are really faint with hunger, eat 2 slices of your pride, and I hope they don't give you indigestion." A few minutes after, a bricklayer passed by, carrying a pail full of plaster on his shoulder. "Good man, will you be kind enough to give a penny to a poor boy who is yawning from hunger?" "Gladly," answered the bricklayer. "Come with me and carry some plaster, and instead of 1 penny, I'll give you 5. "But the plaster is heavy," answered Pinocchio, "and the work too hard for me." "If the work is too hard for you, my boy, enjoy your yawns, and may they bring you luck."
In less than a half hour, at least 20 people passed, and Pinocchio begged of each one. But they all answered, "Aren't you ashamed? Instead of being a beggar in the streets, why don't you look for work and earn your own bread?" Finally, a little woman went by, carrying 2 water jugs. "Good woman, will you allow me to have a drink from one of your jugs?" asked Pinocchio, who was burning up with thirst. "With pleasure, my boy," she answered, setting the 2 jugs on the ground before him. When Pinocchio had had his fill, he grumbled as he wiped his mouth, "My thirst is gone. If I could only as easily get rid of my hunger." On hearing these words, the good little woman immediately said, "If you help me to carry these jugs home, I'll give you a slice of bread." Pinocchio looked at the jug and said neither yes nor no. "And with the bread, I'll give you a nice dish of cauliflower with white sauce on it." Pinocchio gave the jug another look and said neither yes nor no. "And after the cauliflower, some cake and jam." At this last bribery, Pinocchio could no longer resist and said firmly, "Very well, I'll take the jug home for you." The jug was very heavy, and the marionette, not being strong enough to carry it with his hands, had to put it on his head. When they arrived home, the little woman made Pinocchio sit down at a small table and placed before him the bread, the cauliflower, and the cake.
Pinocchio did not eat, he devoured. His stomach seemed a bottomless pit. His hunger finally appeased, he raised his head to thank his kind benefactress. But he had not looked at her long when he gave a cry of surprise and sat there with his eyes wide open, his fork in the air, and his mouth filled with bread and cauliflower. Why all this surprise?" asked the good woman, laughing. "Because," answered Pinocchio, stammering and stuttering, "because you look like, you remind me of, yes, the same voice, the same eyes, the same hair. Yes, you also have the same azure hair she had. Oh, my little fairy, tell me that it is you. Don't make me cry any longer. If you only knew, I have cried so much, I have suffered so." And Pinocchio threw himself on the floor and clasped the knees of the mysterious little woman.
Chapter 25. Pinocchio promises the fairy to be good and to study, as he is growing tired of being a marionette and wishes to become a real boy. If Pinocchio cried much longer, the little woman thought he would melt away, so she finally admitted that she was the little fairy with azure hair. "You rascal of a marionette! How did you know it was I?" she asked, laughing. "My love for you told me who you were. Do you remember? You left me when I was a little girl, and now you find me a grown woman. I am so old, I could almost be your mother. I am very glad of that, for then I can call you mother instead of sister. For a long time I have wanted a mother, just like other boys. But how did you grow so quickly? That's a secret."
"Tell it to me. I also want to grow a little. Look at me. I have never grown higher than a penny's worth of cheese." "But you can't grow," answered the fairy. "Why not?" "Because marionettes never grow. They are born marionettes, they live marionettes, and they die marionettes." "Oh, I'm tired of always being a marionette," cried Pinocchio disgustedly. "It's about time for me to grow into a man as everyone else does." "And you will, if you deserve it." "Really? What can I do to deserve it?" "It's a very simple matter. Try to act like a well-behaved child." "Don't you think I do?" "Far from it. Good boys are obedient, and you, on the contrary, and I never obey. Good boys love study and work, but you, and I, on the contrary, am a lazy fellow and a tramp all year round. Good boys always tell the truth, and I always tell lies. Good boys go gladly to school, and I get sick if I go to school. From now on, I'll be different. Do you promise?" "I promise. I want to become a good boy and be a comfort to my father. Where is my poor father now?" "I do not know." "Will I ever be lucky enough to find him and embrace him once more?" "I think so. Indeed, I am sure of it." At this answer, Pinocchio's happiness was very great. He grasped the fairy's hands and kissed them so hard that it looked as if he had lost his head. Then, lifting his face, he looked at her lovingly and asked, "Tell me, little mother, it isn't true that you are dead, is it?" "It doesn't seem so," answered the fairy, smiling. "If you only knew how I suffered and how I wept when I read 'Here lies—'" "I know it, and for that I have forgiven you. The depth of your sorrow made me see that you have a kind heart. There is always hope for boys with hearts such as yours, though they may often be very mischievous. This is the reason why I have come so far to look for you. From now on, I'll be your own little mother." "Oh, how lovely!" cried Pinocchio, jumping with joy. "You will obey me always and do as I wish?" "Gladly, very gladly, more than gladly."
"Beginning tomorrow," said the fairy, "you'll go to school every day." Pinocchio's face fell a little. "Then you will choose the trade you like best." Pinocchio became more serious. "What are you mumbling to yourself?" asked the fairy. "I was just saying," whined the marionette in a whisper, "that it seems too late for me to go to school now." "No, indeed. Remember, it is never too late to learn." "But I don't want either trade or profession." "Why?" "Because work wearies me." "My dear boy," said the fairy, "people who speak as you do usually end their days either in a prison or in a hospital."
A man, remember, whether rich or poor, should do something in this world. No one can find happiness without work. Woe betide the lazy fellow! Laziness is a serious illness, and one must cure it immediately. Yes, even from early childhood. If not, it will kill you in the end. These words touched Pinocchio's heart. He lifted his eyes to his fairy and said seriously, "I'll work, I'll study, I'll do all you tell me. After all, the life of a marionette has grown very tiresome to me, and I want to become a boy, no matter how hard it is. You promise that, do you not?" "Yes, I promise, and now it is up to you."
Chapter 26. Pinocchio goes to the seashore with his friends to see the terrible shark. In the morning, bright and early, Pinocchio started for school. Imagine what the boys said when they saw a marionette enter the classroom. They laughed until they cried. Everyone played tricks on him. One pulled his hat off, another tugged at his coat, a third tried to paint a mustache under his nose. One even attempted to tie strings to his feet and his hands to make him dance. For a while, Pinocchio was very calm and quiet. Finally, however, he lost all patience, and turning to his tormentors, he said to them threateningly, "Careful, boys. I haven't come here to be made fun of. I'll respect you, and I want you to respect me."
"Hurrah for Dr. Know-All! You have spoken like a printed book!" howled the boys, bursting with laughter. One of them, more impudent than the rest, put out his hand to pull the marionette's nose. But he was not quick enough, for Pinocchio stretched his leg under the table and kicked him hard on the shin. "Oh, what hard feet!" cried the boy, rubbing the spot where the marionette had kicked him. "And what elbows! They are even harder than the feet!" shouted another one, who, because of some other trick, had received a blow in the stomach. With that kick and that blow, Pinocchio gained everybody's favor. Everyone admired him, danced attendance upon him, petted and caressed him. As the days passed into weeks, even the teacher praised him, for he saw him attentive, hard-working, and wide awake. Always the first to come in the morning and the last to leave when school was over. Pinocchio's only fault was that he had too many friends. Among these were many well-known rascals who cared not a jot for study or for success. The teacher warned him each day, and even the good fairy repeated to him many times, "Take care, Pinocchio. Those bad companions will sooner or later make you lose your love for study. Someday they will lead you astray." "There's no such danger," answered the marionette, shrugging his shoulders and pointing to his forehead, as if to say, "I'm too wise."
So it happened that one day, as he was walking to school, he met some boys who ran up to him and said, "Have you heard the news?" "No, a shark as big as a mountain has been seen near the shore." "Really? I wonder if it could be the same one I heard of when my father was drowned." "We are going to see it. Are you coming?" "No, not I. I must go to school." "What do you care about school? You can go there tomorrow. With a lesson more or less, we are always the same donkeys." "And what will the teacher say?" "Let him talk. He is paid to grumble all day long." "And my mother?" "Mothers don't know anything," answered those scamps. "Do you know what I'll do?" said Pinocchio. "For certain reasons of mine, I too want to see that shark, but I'll go after school. I can see him then as well as now." "Poor simpleton!" cried one of the boys. "Do you think that a fish of that size will stand there waiting for you? He turns and off he goes, and no one will ever be the wiser." "How long does it take from here to the shore?" asked the marionette. 1 hour there and back." "Very well then, let's see who gets there first," cried Pinocchio. At the signal, the little troop, with books under their arms, dashed across the fields. Pinocchio led the way, running as if on wings, the others following as fast as they could. Now and again, he looked back, and seeing his followers hot and tired and with tongues hanging out, he laughed out heartily. Unhappy boy! If he had only known then the dreadful things that were to happen to him on account of his disobedience. Chapter 27. The Great Battle Between Pinocchio and His Playmates. One is wounded. Pinocchio is arrested. Going like the wind, Pinocchio took but a very short time to reach the shore. He glanced all about him, but there was no sign of a shark. The sea was as smooth as glass. "Hey there, boys! Where's that shark?" he asked, turning to his playmates. "He may have gone for his breakfast," said one of them, laughing. "Or perhaps he went to bed for a little nap," said another, laughing also. From the answers and the laughter which followed them, Pinocchio understood that the boys had played a trick on him. "What now?" he said angrily to them. "What's the joke?" "Oh, the joke's on you!" cried his tormentors, laughing more heartily than ever and dancing gaily around the marionette. "And that is that we have made you stay out of school to come with us. Aren't you ashamed of being such a goody-goody and of studying so hard? You never have a bit of enjoyment. And what is it to you if I do study? What does the teacher think of us, you mean? Why? Don't you see, if you study and we don't, we pay for it. After all, it's only fair to look out for ourselves. What do you want me to do? Hate school and books and teachers, as we all do. They are your worst enemies, you know, and they like to make you as unhappy as they can. And if I go on studying, what will you do to me?" "You'll pay for it." "Really, you amuse me," answered the marionette, nodding his head. "Hey, Pinocchio!" cried the tallest of them all. "That will do. We are tired of hearing you bragging about yourself, you little turkey cock. You may not be afraid of us, but remember, we are not afraid of you either. You are alone, you know, and we are 7. "Like the 7 sins," said Pinocchio, still laughing. "Did you hear that? He has insulted us all. He has called us sins. Pinocchio, apologize for that, or look out." "Cuckoo," said the marionette, mocking them with his thumb to his nose. "You'll be sorry. Cuckoo. We'll whip you soundly. Cuckoo. You'll go home with a broken nose. Cuckoo. Very well then, take that and keep it for your supper.
called out the boldest of his tormentors. And with the words, he gave Pinocchio a terrible blow on the head. Pinocchio answered with another blow, and that was the signal for the beginning of the fray. In a few moments, the fight raged, hot and heavy on both sides. Pinocchio, although alone, defended himself bravely. With those 2 wooden feet of his, he worked so fast that his opponents kept at a respectful distance. Wherever they landed, they left their painful mark, and the boys could only run away and howl. Enraged at not being able to fight the marionette at close quarters, they started to throw all kinds of books at him. Readers, geographies, histories, grammars flew in all directions. But Pinocchio was keen of eye and swift of movement, and the books only passed over his head, landed in the sea, and disappeared. The fish, thinking they might be good to eat, came to the top of the water in great numbers. Some took a nibble, some took a bite, but no sooner had they tasted a page or 2 than they spat them out with a wry face, as if to say, "What a horrid taste! Our own food is so much better." Meanwhile, the battle waxed more and more furious. At the noise, a large crab crawled slowly out of the water, and with a voice that sounded like a trombone suffering from a cold, he cried out, "Stop fighting, you rascals! These battles between boys rarely end well. Trouble is sure to come to you." Poor crab! He might as well have spoken to the wind. Instead of listening to his good advice, Pinocchio turned to him and said as roughly as he knew how, "Keep quiet, ugly Gab. It would be better for you to chew a few cough drops to get rid of that cold you have. Go to bed and sleep. You will feel better in the morning." In the meantime, the boys, having used all their books, looked around for new ammunition. Seeing Pinocchio's bundle lying idle nearby, they somehow managed to get a hold of it. One of the books was a very large volume, an arithmetic text, heavily bound in leather. It was Pinocchio's pride. Among all his books, he liked that one the best. Thinking it would make a fine missile, one of the boys took hold of it and threw it with all his strength at Pinocchio's head.
But instead of hitting the marionette, the book struck one of the other boys, who, as pale as a ghost, cried out faintly, "Oh, Mother, help! I'm dying!" and fell senseless to the ground. At the sight of that pale little corpse, the boys were so frightened that they turned tail and ran. In a few moments, all had disappeared. All except Pinocchio. Although scared to death by the horror of what had been done, he ran to the sea and soaked his handkerchief in the cool water, and with it bathed the head of his poor little schoolmate. Sobbing bitterly, he called to him, saying, "Eugene, my poor Eugene, open your eyes and look at me. Why don't you answer? I was not the one who hit you, you know. Believe me, I didn't do it. Open your eyes, Eugene. If you keep them shut, I'll die too. Oh, dear me, how shall I ever go home now? How shall I ever look at my little mother again? What will happen to me? Where shall I go? Where shall I hide? Oh, how much better it would have been, 1,000 times better, if only I had gone to school. Why did I listen to those boys? They always were a bad influence. And to think that the teacher had told me, and my mother too, beware of bad company. That's what she said. But I'm stubborn and proud. I listen, but always I do as I wish. And then I pay. I've never had a moment's peace since I've been born. Oh dear, what will become of me? What will become of me?"
Pinocchio went on crying and moaning and beating his head. Again and again he called to his little friend, when suddenly he heard heavy steps approaching. He looked up and saw 2 tall carabiners near him. "What are you doing stretched out on the ground?" they asked Pinocchio.
"I'm helping this schoolfellow of mine." "Has he fainted?" "I should say so," said one of the carabineers, bending to look at Eugene. "This boy has been wounded on the temple. Who has hurt him?" "Not I," stammered the marionette, who had hardly a breath left in his whole body. "If it wasn't you, who was it then?" "Not I," repeated Pinocchio. "And with what was he wounded?" "With this book." And the marionette picked up the arithmetic text to show it to the officer. "And whose book is this?" "Mine." "Enough. Not another word. Get up as quickly as you can and come along with us." "But I—" "Come with us." "But I am innocent." "Come with us." Before starting out, the officers called out to several fishermen passing by in a boat and said to them, "Take care of this little fellow who has been hurt. Take him home and bind his wounds. Tomorrow we'll come after him." They then took hold of Pinocchio and, putting him between them, said to him in a rough voice, "March, and go quickly, or it will be the worse for you." They did not have to repeat their words. The marionette walked swiftly along the road to the village, but the poor fellow hardly knew what he was about. He thought he had a nightmare. He felt ill. His eyes saw everything double. His legs trembled. His tongue was dry. And try he might, he could not utter a single word.
Yet, in spite of this numbness of feeling, he suffered keenly at the thought of passing under the windows of his good little fairy's house. What would she say on seeing him between 2 carabiners? They had just reached the village when a sudden gust of wind blew off Pinocchio's cap and made it go sailing far down the street. "Would you allow me," the marionette asked the carabiners, "to run after my cap?" "Very well. Go, but hurry." The marionette went, picked up his cap, but instead of putting it on his head, he stuck it between his teeth and then raced toward the sea. He went like a bullet out of a gun. The carabiners, judging that it would be very difficult to catch him, sent a large mastiff after him, one that had won first prize in all the dog races. Pinocchio ran fast, and the dog ran faster. At so much noise, the people hung out of the windows or gathered in the street, anxious to see the end of the contest. But they were disappointed, for the dog and Pinocchio raised so much dust on the road that after a few moments, it was impossible to see them.
Chapter 28. Pinocchio runs the danger of being fried in a pan like a fish. During that wild chase, Pinocchio lived through a terrible moment when he almost gave himself up as lost. This was when Alidoro, that was the mastiff's name, in a frenzy of running, came so near that he was on the very point of reaching him. The marionette heard, close behind him, the labored breathing of the beast who was fast on his trail, and now and again even felt his hot breath blow over him.
Luckily, by this time, he was very near the shore, and the sea was in sight. In fact, only a few short steps away. As soon as he set foot on the beach, Pinocchio gave a leap and fell into the water. Alidoro tried to stop, but as he was running very fast, he couldn't. And he, too, landed far out in the sea. Strange though it may seem, the dog could not swim. He beat the water with his paws to hold himself up, but the harder he tried, the deeper he sank. As he stuck his head out once more, the poor fellow's eyes were bulging, and he barked out wildly, "I drown! I drown!" "Drown?" answered Pinocchio from afar, happy at his escape. "Help, Pinocchio! Dear little Pinocchio! Save me from death!"
At those cries of suffering, the marionette, who, after all, had a very kind heart, was moved to compassion. He turned toward the poor animal and said to him, "But if I help you, will you promise not to bother me again by running after me?" I promise. Only hurry, for if you wait another second, I'll be dead and gone." Pinocchio hesitated still another minute. Then, remembering how his father had often told him that a kind deed is never lost, he swam to Alidoro and, catching hold of his tail, dragged him to the shore. The poor dog was so weak he could not stand. He had swallowed so much salt water that he was swollen like a balloon. However, Pinocchio, not wishing to trust him too much, threw himself once again into the sea. As he swam away, he called out, "Goodbye, Alidoro! Good luck, and remember me to the family!"
"Goodbye, little Pinocchio," answered the dog. "1,000 thanks for having saved me from death. You did me a good turn, and in this world, what is given is always returned. If the chance comes, I shall be there." Pinocchio went on swimming close to shore. At last he thought he had reached a safe place. Glancing up and down the beach, he saw the opening of a cave, out of which rose a spiral of smoke. "In that cave," he said to himself, "there must be a fire. So much the better. I'll dry my clothes and warm myself, and then, well..." His mind made up, Pinocchio swam to the rocks, but as he started to climb, he felt something under him, lifting him up higher and higher. He tried to escape, but he was too late. To his great surprise, he found himself in a huge net, amid a crowd of fish of all kinds and sizes, who were fighting and struggling desperately to free themselves. At the same time, he saw a fisherman come out of the cave, a fisherman so ugly that Pinocchio thought he was a sea monster. In place of hair, his head was covered by a thick bush of green grass. Green was the skin of his body, green were his eyes, green was the long beard that reached down to his feet. He looked like a giant lizard with legs and arms. When the fisherman pulled the net out of the sea, he cried out joyfully, "Blessed Providence! Once more I'll have a fine meal of fish." "Thank heaven I'm not a fish," said Pinocchio to himself, trying with these words to find a little courage. The fisherman took the net and the fish to the cave, a dark, gloomy, smoky place. In the middle of it, a pan full of oil sizzled over a smoky fire, sending out a repelling odor of tallow that took away one's breath.
"Now let's see what kind of fish we have caught today," said the green fisherman. He put a hand as big as a spade into the net and pulled out a handful of mullets. "Fine mullets, these," he said, after looking at them and smelling them with pleasure. After that, he threw them into a large, empty tub. Many times he repeated this performance. As he pulled each fish out of the net, his mouth watered with the thought of the good dinner coming, and he said, "Fine fish, these bass. Very tasty, these whitefish. Delicious flounders, these. What splendid crabs. And these dear little anchovies with their heads still on." As you can well imagine, the bass, the flounders, the whitefish, and even the little anchovies all went together into the tub to keep the mullets company. The last to come out of the net was Pinocchio. As soon as the fisherman pulled him out, his green eyes opened wide with surprise, and he cried out in fear, "What kind of fish is this? I don't remember ever eating anything like it." He looked at him closely, and after turning him over and over, he said at last, "I understand. He must be a crab." Pinocchio, mortified at being taken for a crab, said resentfully, "What nonsense! A crab indeed! I am no such thing. Beware how you deal with me. I am a marionette, I want you to know." "A marionette?" asked the fisherman. "I must admit that a marionette fish is, for me, an entirely new kind of fish. So much the better. I'll eat you with greater relish." "Eat me?
But can't you understand that I'm not a fish? Can't you hear that I speak and think as you do?"
"It's true," answered the fisherman. "But since I see that you are a fish, well able to talk and think as I do, I'll treat you with all due respect. And that is? That, as a sign of my particular esteem, I'll leave to you the choice of the manner in which you are to be cooked. Do you wish to be fried in a pan, or do you prefer to be cooked with tomato sauce?" "To tell you the truth," answered Pinocchio, "if I must choose, I should much rather go free so I may return home." "Are you fooling? Do you think that I want to lose the opportunity to taste such a rare fish? A marionette fish does not come very often to these seas. Leave it to me. I'll fry you in the pan with the others. I know you'll like it. It's always a comfort to find oneself in good company." The unlucky marionette, hearing this, began to cry and wail and beg. With tears streaming down his cheeks, he said, "Oh, how much better it would have been for me to go to school. I did listen to my playmates, and now I am paying for it. Oh, oh, oh!" And as he struggled and squirmed like an eel to escape from him, the green fisherman took a stout cord and tied him hand and foot and threw him into the bottom of the tub with the others. Then he pulled a wooden bowl full of flour out of a cupboard and started to roll the fish into it, one by one. When they were white with it, he threw them into the pan. The first to dance in the hot oil were the mullets. The bass followed, then the whitefish, the flounders, and the anchovies. Pinocchio's turn came last. Seeing himself so near to death, and such a horrible death, he began to tremble so with fright that he had no voice left with which to beg for his life.
The poor boy beseeched only with his eyes, but the green fisherman, not even noticing that it was he, turned him over and over in the flour until he looked like a marionette made of chalk. Then he took him by the head and...
Chapter 29. Pinocchio returns to the fairy's house, and she promises him that, on the morrow, he will cease to be a marionette and become a boy. A wonderful party of coffee and milk to celebrate the great event. Mindful of what the fisherman had said, Pinocchio knew that all hope of being saved had gone. He closed his eyes and waited for the final moment. Suddenly, a large dog, attracted by the odor of the boiling oil, came running into the cave. "Get out!" cried the fisherman threateningly, and still holding on to the marionette, who was all covered with flour. But the poor dog was very hungry, and whining and wagging his tail, he tried to say, "Give me a bite of the fish, and I'll go in peace." "Get out, I say," repeated the fisherman, and he drew back his foot to give the dog a kick. Then the dog, who, being really hungry, would take no refusal, turned in a rage toward the fisherman and bared his terrible fangs. And at that moment a pitiful little voice was heard saying, "Save me, Alidoro! If you don't, I fry!" The dog immediately recognized Pinocchio's voice. Great was his surprise to find that the voice came from the little flour-covered bundle that the fisherman held in his hand.
Then what did he do? With one great leap, he grasped that bundle in his mouth and, holding it lightly between his teeth, ran through the door and disappeared like a flash. The fisherman, angry at seeing his meal snatched from under his nose, ran after the dog, but a bad fit of coughing made him stop and turn back. Meanwhile, Alidoro, as soon as he had found the road which led to the village, stopped and dropped Pinocchio softly to the ground. "How much I do thank you," said the marionette.
"It is not necessary," answered the dog. "You saved me once, and what is given is always returned. We are in this world to help one another." "But how did you get in that cave? I was lying here on the sand more dead than alive when an appetizing odor of fried fish came to me. That odor tickled my hunger, and I followed it. Oh, if I had come a moment later—" "Don't speak about it," wailed Pinocchio, still trembling with fright. "Don't say a word. If you had come a moment later, I would be fried, eaten, and digested by this time. Brrr! I shiver at the mere thought of it." Alidoro laughingly held out his paw to the marionette, who shook it heartily, feeling that now he and the dog were good friends. Then they bid each other goodbye, and the dog went home. Pinocchio, left alone, walked toward a little hut nearby where an old man sat at the door sunning himself, and asked, "Tell me, good man, have you heard anything of a poor boy with a wounded head, whose name was Eugene?" The boy was brought to this hut, and now—
"Now he is dead?" Pinocchio interrupted sorrowfully. "No, he is now alive, and he has already returned home." "Really? Really?" cried the marionette, jumping around with joy. "Then the wound was not serious?" "But it might have been, and even mortal," answered the old man, "for a heavy book was thrown at his head." "And who threw it?" "A schoolmate of his, a certain Pinocchio." "And who is this Pinocchio?" asked the marionette, feigning ignorance. "They say he is a mischief maker, a tramp, a street urchin." "Calumnies! All calumnies!" "Do you know this Pinocchio?" "By sight," answered the marionette. "And what do you think of him?" asked the old man. "I think he's a very good boy, fond of study, obedient, kind to his father and to his whole family." As he was telling all these enormous lies about himself, Pinocchio touched his nose and found it twice as long as it should be. Scared out of his wits, he cried out, "Don't listen to me, good man! All the wonderful things I have said are not true at all. I know Pinocchio well, and he is indeed a very wicked fellow, lazy and disobedient, who instead of going to school, runs away with his playmates to have a good time." At this speech, his nose returned to its natural size. "Why are you so pale?" the old man asked suddenly.
"Let me tell you, without knowing it, I rubbed myself against a newly painted wall," he lied, ashamed to say that he had been made ready for the frying pan. "What have you done with your coat and your hat and your breeches?" I met thieves, and they robbed me. Tell me, my good man, have you not perhaps a little suit to give me, so that I may go home?" "My boy, as for clothes, I have only a bag in which I keep hops. If you want it, take it. There it is." Pinocchio did not wait for him to repeat his words. He took the bag, which happened to be empty, and after cutting a big hole at the top and two at the sides, he slipped into it as if it were a shirt. Lightly clad as he was, he started out toward the village. Along the way, he felt very uneasy. In fact, he was so unhappy that he went along taking 2 steps forward and 1 back. And as he went, he said to himself, "How shall I ever face my good little fairy? What will she say when she sees me? Will she forgive this last trick of mine? I am sure she won't. Oh no, she won't. And I deserve it, as usual, for I am a rascal, fine on promises, which I never keep." He came to the village late at night. It was so dark he could see nothing, and it was raining pitchforks. Pinocchio went straight to the fairy's house, firmly resolved to knock at the door. When he found himself there, he lost courage and ran back a few steps. A second time he came to the door, and again he ran back.
A third time he repeated his performance. The fourth time, before he had time to lose his courage, he grasped the knocker and made a faint sound with it. He waited and waited and waited. Finally, after a full half-hour, a top-floor window, the house had 4 stories, opened, and Pinocchio saw a large snail look out. A tiny light glowed on top of her head. "Who knocks at this late hour?" she called. "Is the fairy home?" asked the marionette. "The fairy is asleep and does not wish to be disturbed. Who are you?" "It is I." "Who's I?" "Pinocchio." "Who is Pinocchio?" "The marionette, the one who lives in the fairy's house." "Oh, I understand," said the snail. "Wait for me there. I'll come down to open the door for you." "Hurry, I beg of you, for I am dying of cold." "My boy, I am a snail, and snails are never in a hurry." An hour passed, 2 hours, and the door was still closed. Pinocchio, who was trembling with fear and shivering from the cold rain on his back, knocked a second time, this time louder than before. At that second knock, a window on the 3rd floor opened, and the same snail looked out. "Dear little snail," cried Pinocchio from the street, "I have been waiting 2 hours for you, and 2 hours on a dreadful night like this are as long as 2 years. Hurry, please." "My boy, I am a snail, and snails are never in a hurry." And the window closed. A few minutes later, midnight struck, then 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and the door still remained closed. Then Pinocchio, losing all patience, grasped the knocker with both hands, fully determined to awaken the whole house and street with it. As soon as he touched the knocker, however, it became an eel and wiggled away into the darkness. "Really," cried Pinocchio, blind with rage, "if the knocker is gone, I can still use my feet." He stepped back and gave the door a most solemn kick. He kicked so hard that his foot went straight through the door and his leg followed almost to the knee. No matter how he pulled and tugged, he could not pull it out. There he stayed, as if nailed to the door. Poor Pinocchio! The rest of the night he had to spend with one foot through the door and the other one in the air. As dawn was breaking, the door finally opened. That brave little animal, the snail, had taken exactly 9 hours to go from the 4th floor to the street. How she must have raced! "What are you doing with your foot through the door?" she asked the marionette, laughing. "It was a misfortune. Won't you try, pretty little snail, to free me from this terrible torture?" "My boy, we need a carpenter here, and I have never been one." "Ask the fairy to help me." "The fairy is asleep and does not want to be disturbed." "But what do you want me to do, nailed to the door like this?" "Enjoy yourself, counting the ants which are passing by." "Bring me something to eat at least, for I am faint with hunger." Immediately. In fact, after 3 hours and a half, Pinocchio saw her return with a silver tray on her head. On the tray there was bread, roast chicken, fruit. "Here is the breakfast the fairy sends to you," said the snail. At the sight of all these good things, the marionette felt much better. What was his disgust, however, when on tasting the food he found the bread to be made of chalk, the chicken of cardboard, and the brilliant fruit of colored alabaster. He wanted to cry. He wanted to give himself up to despair. He wanted to throw away the tray and all that was on it. Instead, either from pain or weakness, he fell to the floor in a dead faint. When he regained his senses, he found himself stretched out on a sofa, and the fairy was seated near him. "This time also I forgive you," said the fairy to him. "But be careful not to get into mischief again." Pinocchio promised to study and to behave himself, and he kept his word for the remainder of the year. At the end of it, he passed first in all his examinations, and his report was so good that the fairy said to him happily, "Tomorrow your wish will come true." "And what is it?" "Tomorrow you will cease to be a marionette and will become a real boy." Pinocchio was beside himself with joy. All his friends and schoolmates must be invited to celebrate the great event. The fairy promised to prepare 200 cups of coffee and milk, and 400 slices of toast buttered on both sides.
The day promised to be a very gay and happy one, but unluckily, in a marionette's life, there's always a but, which is apt to spoil everything.
Chapter 30. Pinocchio, instead of becoming a boy, runs away to the land of toys with his friend Lampwick. Coming at last out of the surprise into which the fairy's words had thrown him, Pinocchio asked for permission to give out the invitations. "Indeed, you may invite your friends to tomorrow's party. Only remember to return home before dark. Do you understand?" "I'll be back in 1 hour without fail," answered the marionette. "Take care, Pinocchio. Boys give promises very easily, but they as easily forget them. But I am not like those others. When I give my word, I keep it." "We shall see. In case you do disobey, you will be the one to suffer, not anyone else." "Why?" "Because boys who do not listen to their elders always come to grief." "I certainly have," said Pinocchio, "but from now on, I obey." "We shall see if you are telling the truth." Without adding another word, the marionette bade the good fairy goodbye, and singing and dancing he left the house. In a little more than an hour, all his friends were invited. Some accepted quickly and gladly. Others had to be coaxed, but when they heard that the toast was to be buttered on both sides, they all ended by accepting the invitation with the words, "We'll come to please you."
Now it must be known that among all his friends, Pinocchio had one whom he loved most of all. The boy's real name was Romeo, but everyone called him Lampwick, for he was long and thin and had a woebegone look about him. Lampwick was the laziest boy in the school and the biggest mischief maker, but Pinocchio loved him dearly. That day he went straight to his friend's house to invite him to a party, but Lampwick was not at home. He went a second time, and again a third, but still without success. Where could he be? Pinocchio searched here and there and everywhere, and finally discovered him hiding near a farmer's wagon. "What are you doing there?" asked Pinocchio, running up to him. "I am waiting for midnight to strike to go—" "Where?" "Far, far away." "And I have gone to your house 3 times to look for you." "What did you want from me?" "Haven't you heard the news? Don't you know what good luck is mine?" "What is it?" "Tomorrow I end my days as a marionette and become a boy, like you and all my other friends. May it bring you luck." "Shall I see you at my party tomorrow?" "But I'm telling you that I go tonight." "At what time?" "At midnight." "And where are you going?" "To a real country, the best in the world, a wonderful place." "What is it called?"
It is called the Land of Toys. Why don't you come too? I? Oh, no. You are making a big mistake, Pinocchio. Believe me, if you don't come, you'll be sorry. Where can you find a place that will agree better with you and me? No schools, no teachers, no books. In that blessed place, there is no such thing as study. Here, it is only on Saturdays that we have no school. In the Land of Toys, every day, except Sunday, is a Saturday. Vacation begins on the 1st of January and ends on the last day of December. That is the place for me. All countries should be like it. How happy we should all be! But how does one spend the day in the Land of Toys? Days are spent in play and enjoyment from morn till night. At night, one goes to bed, and next morning, the good times begin all over again. What do you think of it? Said Pinocchio, nodding his wooden head, as if to say, it's the kind of life which would agree with me perfectly. Do you want to go with me then? Yes or no? You must make up your mind. No, and again, no! I have promised my kind fairy to become a good boy, and I want to keep my word. Just see, the sun is setting, and I must leave you and run. Goodbye, and good luck to you. Where are you going in such a hurry? Home! My good fairy wants me to return home before night. Wait 2 minutes more. It's too late. Only 2 minutes.
And if the fairy scolds me? Let her scold. After she gets tired, she will stop, said Lampwick. Are you going alone or with others? Alone? There will be more than 100 of us. Will you walk? At midnight, the wagon passes here that is to take us within the boundaries of that marvelous country. How I wish midnight would strike! Why? To see you all set out together. Stay here a while longer, and you will see us. No, I want to return home. Wait 2 more minutes. I have waited too long as it is. The fairy will be worried. Poor fairy. Is she afraid the bats will eat you up? Listen, Lampwick, said the marionette. Are you really sure that there are no schools in the Land of Toys? Not even the shadow of one. Not even one teacher? Not one. And one does not have to study? Never, never, never. What a great land, said Pinocchio, feeling his mouth water. What a beautiful land! I have never been there, but I can well imagine it. Why don't you come too? It is useless for you to tempt me. I told you I promised my good fairy to behave myself, and I'm going to keep my word. Goodbye, then, and remember me to the grammar schools, to the high schools, and even to the colleges if you meet them on the way. Goodbye, Lampwick. Have a pleasant trip. Enjoy yourself, and remember your friends once in a while.
With these words, the marionette started on his way home. Turning once more to his friend, he asked him, "But are you sure that in that country each week is composed of 6 Saturdays and 1 Sunday?" "Very sure." "And that vacation begins on the 1st of January and ends on the 31st of December?" "Very, very sure." "What a great country!" repeated Pinocchio, puzzled as to what to do. Then, in sudden determination, he said hurriedly, "Goodbye for the last time, and good luck." "Goodbye. How soon will you go?" "Within 2 hours." "What a pity! If it were only 1 hour, I might wait for you." "And the fairy?"
By this time, I'm late, and 1 hour more or less makes very little difference. Poor Pinocchio. And if the fairy scolds you? Oh, I'll let her scold. After she gets tired, she will stop. In the meantime, the night became darker and darker. All at once, in the distance, a small light flickered. A queer sound could be heard, soft as a little bell, and faint and muffled like the buzz of a faraway mosquito. "There it is," cried Lampwick, jumping to his feet. "What?" whispered Pinocchio. "The wagon which is coming to get me. For the last time, are you coming or not?"
But is it really true that in that country, boys never have to study? Never, never, never. What a wonderful, beautiful, marvelous country! Oh.
Chapter 31. After 5 months of play, Pinocchio wakes up one fine morning and finds a great surprise awaiting him. Finally, the wagon arrived. It made no noise, for its wheels were bound with straw and rags. It was drawn by 12 pair of donkeys, all of the same size, but all of different color. Some were gray, others white, and still others a mixture of brown and black. Here and there were a few with large yellow and blue stripes. The strangest thing of all was that those 24 donkeys, instead of being iron-shod like any other beast of burden, had on their feet laced shoes made of leather, just like the ones boys wear. And the driver of the wagon? Imagine to yourselves a little fat man, much wider than he was long, round and shiny as a ball of butter, with a face beaming like an apple, a little mouth that always smiled, and a voice small and wheedling, like that of a cat begging for food. No sooner did any boy see him than he fell in love with him, and nothing satisfied him but to be allowed to ride in his wagon to that lovely place called the Land of Toys. In fact, the wagon was so closely packed with boys of all ages that it looked like a box of sardines.
They were uncomfortable. They were piled one on top of the other. They could hardly breathe, yet not one word of complaint was heard. The thought that in a few hours they would reach a country where there were no schools, no books, no teachers, made these boys so happy that they felt neither hunger, nor thirst, nor sleep, nor discomfort. No sooner had the wagon stopped than the little fat man turned to Lampwick. With bows and smiles, he asked in a wheedling tone, "Tell me, my fine boy, do you also want to come to my wonderful country?" "Indeed I do." "But I warn you, my little dear, there's no more room in the wagon. It is full." "Never mind," answered Lampwick. "If there's no room inside, I can sit on the top of the coach." And with one leap, he perched himself there. "What about you, my love?" asked the little man, turning politely to Pinocchio. "What are you going to do? Will you come with us, or do you stay here?" "I stay here," answered Pinocchio. "I want to return home, as I prefer to study and to succeed in life." "May that bring you luck." "Pinocchio," Lampwick called out, "listen to me. Come with us and we'll always be happy." "No, no, no!" "Come with us and we'll always be happy," cried 4 other voices from the wagon. "Come with us and we'll always be happy," shouted the 100 and more boys in the wagon all together. "And if I go with you, what will my good fairy say?" asked the marionette, who was beginning to waver and weaken in his good resolutions.
Don't worry so much. Only think that we are going to a land where we shall be allowed to make
all the racket we like from morning till night." Pinocchio did not answer, but sighed deeply, once, twice, a third time. Finally, he said, "Make room for me. I want to go too." "The seats are all filled," answered the little man, "but to show you how much I think of you, take my place as coachman." "And you?" "I'll walk." "No, indeed! I could not permit such a thing. I much prefer riding one of these donkeys," cried Pinocchio. No sooner said than done. He approached the first donkey and tried to mount it, but the little animal turned suddenly and gave him such a terrible kick in the stomach that Pinocchio was thrown to the ground and fell with his legs in the air. At this unlooked-for entertainment, the whole company of runaways laughed uproariously. The little fat man did not laugh. He went up to the rebellious animal and, still smiling, bent over him lovingly and bit off half of his right ear. In the meantime, Pinocchio lifted himself up from the ground and with one leap landed on the donkey. The leap was so well taken that all the boys shouted, "Hurrah for Pinocchio!" and clapped their hands in hearty applause. Suddenly, the little donkey gave a kick with his 2 hind feet, and, at this unexpected move, the poor marionette found himself once again sprawling right in the middle of the road. Again, the boys shouted with laughter. But the little fat man, instead of laughing, became so loving toward the little animal that, with another kiss, he bit off half of his left ear.
"You can mount now, my boy," he then said to Pinocchio. "Have no fear. That donkey was worried about something, but I have spoken to him and now he seems quiet and reasonable." Pinocchio mounted and the wagon started on its way. While the donkeys galloped along the stony road, the marionette fancied he heard a very quiet voice whispering to him. "Poor silly, you have done as you wished. But you are going to be a sorry boy before very long." Pinocchio, greatly frightened, looked about him to see whence the words had come, but he saw no one. The donkeys galloped, the wagon rolled on smoothly, the boys slept, Lampwick snored like a dormouse, and the little fat driver sang sleepily between his teeth. After a mile or so, Pinocchio again heard the same faint voice whispering, "Remember, little simpleton, boys who stop studying and turn their backs upon books and schools and teachers in order to give all their time to nonsense and pleasure, sooner or later come to grief. Oh, how well I know this, how well I can prove it to you. A day will come when you will weep bitterly, even as I am weeping now, but it will be too late." At these whispered words, the marionette grew more and more frightened. He jumped to the ground, ran up to the donkey on whose back he had been riding, and, taking his nose in his hands, looked at him. Think how great was his surprise when he saw that the donkey was weeping just like a boy. "Hey, Mr. Driver!" cried the marionette. "Do you know what strange thing is happening here? This donkey weeps." "Let him weep. When he gets married, he will have time to laugh."
Have you perhaps taught him to speak? No, he learned to mumble a few words when he lived for 3 years with a band of trained dogs. Poor beast! "Come, come," said the little man, "do not lose time over a donkey that can weep. Mount quickly and let us go. The night is cool and the road is long." Pinocchio obeyed, without another word. The wagon started again. Toward dawn the next morning, they finally reached that much-longed-for country, the land of toys. This great land was entirely different from any other place in the world. Its population,
large though it was composed wholly of boys. The oldest were about 14 years of age, the youngest 8. In the street there was such a racket, such shouting, such blowing of trumpets, that it was deafening. Everywhere groups of boys were gathered together. Some played at marbles, at hopscotch, at ball. Others rode on bicycles or on wooden horses. Some played at blind man's buff, others at tag. Here a group played circus, there another sang and recited. A few turned somersaults. Others walked on their hands with their feet in the air. Generals in full uniform, leading regiments of cardboard soldiers passed by. Laughter, shrieks, howls, catcalls, hand-clapping followed this parade. One boy made a noise like a hen, another like a rooster, and a third imitated a lion in his den. Altogether, they created such a pandemonium that it would have been necessary for you to put cotton in your ears. The squares were filled with small wooden theaters, overflowing with boys from morning till night. And on the walls of the houses, written with charcoal, were words like these: "Hurrah for the land of toys! Down with arithmetic! No more school!"
As soon as they had set foot in that land, Pinocchio, Lampwick, and all the other boys who had traveled with them started out on a tour of investigation. They wandered everywhere. They looked into every nook and corner, house and theater. They became everybody's friend. Who could be happier than they? What with entertainments and parties, the hours, the days, the weeks passed like lightning. "Oh, what a beautiful life this is," said Pinocchio, each time that by chance he met his friend Lampwick. "Was I right or wrong?" answered Lampwick. "And to think you did not want to come. To think that even yesterday the idea came into your head to return home to see your fairy and to start studying again. If today you are free from pencils and books and school, you owe it to me, to my advice, to my care. Do you admit it? Only true friends count, after all." "It's true, Lampwick, it's true. If today I am a really happy boy, it is all because of you. And to think that the teacher, when speaking of you, used to say, 'Do not go with that Lampwick. He is a bad companion, and someday he will lead you astray.'" "Poor teacher," answered the other, nodding his head. "Indeed, I know how much he disliked me, and how he enjoyed speaking ill of me. But I am of a generous nature, and I gladly forgive him." "Great soul," said Pinocchio, fondly embracing his friend. 5 months passed, and the boys continued playing and enjoying themselves from morn till night, without ever seeing a book or a desk or a school. But, my children, there came a morning when Pinocchio awoke and found a great surprise awaiting him, a surprise which made him feel very unhappy, as you shall see.
Chapter 32. Pinocchio's ears become like those of a donkey. In a little while he changes into a real donkey and begins to bray. Everyone, at one time or another, has found some surprise awaiting him. Of the kind which Pinocchio had on that eventful morning of his life, there are but few. What was it? I will tell you, my dear little readers. On awakening, Pinocchio put his hand up to his head, and there he found... Guess. He found that during the night his ears had grown at least 10 full inches. You must know that the marionette, even from his birth, had very small ears. So small indeed that to the naked eye they could hardly be seen. Fancy how he felt when he noticed that those 2 dainty organs had become as long as shoe brushes. He went in search of a mirror, but not finding any, he just filled a basin with water and looked at himself.
There he saw what he never could have wished to see. His manly figure was adorned and enriched by a beautiful pair of donkey's ears. I leave you to think of the terrible grief, the shame, the despair of the poor marionette. He began to cry, to scream, to knock his head against the wall, but the more he shrieked, the longer and more hairy grew his ears. At those piercing shrieks, a dormouse came into the room, a fat little dormouse who lived upstairs. Seeing Pinocchio so grief-stricken, she asked him anxiously, "What is the matter, dear little neighbor?" "I am sick, my little dormouse, very, very sick, and from an illness which frightens me. Do you understand how to feel the pulse?" "A little." "Feel mine then, and tell me if I have a fever."
The Dormouse took Pinocchio's wrist between her paws, and after a few minutes looked up at him sorrowfully and said, "My friend, I am sorry, but I must give you some very sad news." "What is it?" "You have a very bad fever." "But what fever is it?" "The donkey fever." "I don't know anything about that fever," answered the marionette, beginning to understand even too well what was happening to him. "Then I will tell you all about it," said the Dormouse. "Know then that within 2 or 3 hours you will no longer be a marionette nor a boy." "What shall I be?" "Within 2 or 3 hours you will become a real donkey, just like the ones that pulled the fruit carts to market." "Oh, what have I done? What have I done?" cried Pinocchio, grasping his 2 long ears in his hands and pulling and tugging at them angrily, just as if they belonged to another. "My dear boy," answered the Dormouse, to cheer him up a bit, "why worry now? What is done cannot be undone, you know. Fate has decreed that all lazy boys who come to hate books and schools and teachers and spend all their days with toys and games must sooner or later turn into donkeys." "But is it really so?" asked the marionette, sobbing bitterly. "I am sorry to say it is, and tears now are useless. You should have thought of all this before." "But the fault is not mine. Believe me, little Dormouse, the fault is all Lampwick's." "And who is this Lampwick?"
"A classmate of mine. I wanted to return home. I wanted to be obedient. I wanted to study and to succeed in school. But Lampwick said to me, 'Why do you want to waste your time studying? Why do you want to go to school? Come with me to the land of toys. There we'll never study again. There we can enjoy ourselves and be happy for more until night.' And why did you follow the advice of that false friend?" "Why? Because, my dear little Dormouse, I'm a heedless marionette, heedless and heartless. Oh, if I had only had a bit of heart, I should never have abandoned that good fairy who loved me so well and who has been so kind to me. And by this time, I should no longer be a marionette. I should have become a real boy, like all these friends of mine. Oh, if I meet Lampwick, I am going to tell him what I think of him, and more, too." After this long speech, Pinocchio walked to the door of the room, but when he reached it, remembering his donkey ears, he felt ashamed to show them to the public and turned back. He took a large cotton bag from a shelf, put it on his head, and pulled it far down to his very nose. Thus adorned, he went out. He looked for Lampwick everywhere, along the streets, in the squares, inside the theaters, everywhere, but he was not to be found. He asked everyone whom he met about him, but no one had seen him. In desperation, he returned home and knocked at the door. "Who is it?" asked Lampwick from within. "It is I," answered the marionette. "Wait a minute." After a full half-hour, the door opened. Another surprise awaited Pinocchio. There in the room stood his friend with a large cotton bag on his head, pulled far down to his very nose.
At the sight of that bag, Pinocchio felt slightly happier and thought to himself, "My friend must be suffering from the same sickness that I am. I wonder if he, too, has donkey fever." But pretending he had seen nothing, he asked with a smile, "How are you, my dear Lampwick?" "Very well, like a mouse in a Parmesan cheese." "Is that really true?" "Why should I lie to you?" "I beg your pardon, my friend, but why then are you wearing that cotton bag over your ears?" "The doctor has ordered it because one of my knees hurts." "And you, dear Marionette, why are you wearing that cotton bag down to your nose?" "The doctor has ordered it because I have bruised my foot." "Oh, my poor Pinocchio! Oh, my poor Lampwick!" An embarrassingly long silence followed these words, during which time the two friends looked at each other in a mocking way. Finally, the Marionette, in a voice sweet as honey and soft as a flute, said to his companion, "Tell me, Lampwick, dear friend, have you ever suffered from an earache?" "Never. And you?" "Never. Still, since this morning, my ear has been torturing me." "So has mine." "Yours too? And which ear is it?" "Both of them." "And yours?" "Both of them too. I wonder if it could be the same sickness." "I'm afraid it is." "Will you do me a favor, Lampwick?"
Gladly, with my whole heart. Will you let me see your ears? Why not? But before I show you mine, I want to see yours, dear Pinocchio. No, you must show yours first. No, my dear, yours first, then mine. Well, then, said the Marionette, let us make a contract. Let's hear the contract. Let us take off our caps together, all right? All right. Ready then? Pinocchio began to count. 1, 2, 3. At the word 3, the two boys pulled off their caps and threw them high in air. And then a scene took place which is hard to believe, but it is all too true. The Marionette and his friend, Lampwick, when they saw each other both stricken by the same misfortune, instead of feeling sorrowful and ashamed, began to poke fun at each other, and, after much nonsense, they ended by bursting out into hearty laughter. They laughed and laughed and laughed again, laughed till they ached, laughed till they cried. But all of a sudden, Lampwick stopped laughing. He tottered and almost fell. Pale as a ghost, he turned to Pinocchio and said, "Help, help, Pinocchio." "What is the matter?" "Oh, help me. I can no longer stand up." "I can't either," cried Pinocchio, and his laughter turned to tears as he stumbled about helplessly. They had hardly finished speaking when both of them fell on all fours and began running and jumping around the room. As they ran, their arms turned into legs, their faces lengthened into snouts, and their backs became covered with long gray hairs. This was humiliation enough, but the most horrible moment was the one in which the two poor creatures felt their tails appear. Overcome with shame and grief, they tried to cry and bemoan their fate. But what is done can't be undone. Instead of moans and cries, they burst forth into loud donkey brays, which sounded very much like ha ha ha. At that moment, a loud knocking was heard at the door, and a voice called to them. "Open! I am the little man, the driver of the wagon which brought you here. Open, I say, or beware!"